Welcome to Garage Gym Athlete Cool Downs. These episodes are short, actionable podcasts pulled from previous interviews and content we've been publishing for the last several years. So go for a walk, hop on the rower, or clip into the bike for this cool down episode. You know, and that's what I've always liked a lot about just following you over the years is you have Mobility WOD, and you're definitely known for that stuff, but you're very much whole person concept, from eating your vegetables to sleeping to breathing, through, you know, everything, making sure that's all, each person is really well rounded. And I want to get your take on something, having just discussed what you were talking about, kind of that whole person concept. You've been in the game for a long time, putting out information, and this renaissance, you could call it, has really formed over the last, decade, maybe longer. I've probably only been in the game putting out content and helping people for about a decade, so that's what it seems like to me, but definitely could be longer. Do you feel like the information you're putting out, other people in the same field are putting out, do you think that we are moving in the right direction? Because I feel like you have a pretty broad view, and I think the information is good, but I'm really asking, do you think we're making a dent? Do you think that we're helping? Have you seen a shift?
Well, that's a good question. And I think the first question is, well, let's say that human performance, let's put our field in the human performance field. Let's say that's not fitnessing, right? It's not like I crushed myself at Barry's boot camp, or I went to Soul Cycle and I bled through my eyes, so I'm healthy. Right? I went to CrossFit and did all the thrusters. Let's say, we take this 30,000 foot view first. And I think it's important that we recognize that maybe childhood obesity hasn't changed, that there are more obese Americans than non-obese Americans. Women's ACL injuries is still occurring at 8 to 10 times the rate of men at ACL injuries. We're seeing sort of low back pain is unchecked. There are a whole bunch of problems that I think if we take a 30,000 foot view, maybe we're not doing a great job on. I think we've made things, we've made things very sophisticated for people, and we haven't yet done a good job of transferring what we know are really good practices out of human performance. And, if you read E.O. Wilson's book, Consilience, which I highly recommend, I think he points out that one of the highest sort of goals and aims of science is to impact the humanities. And sometimes, we have to start somewhere and we have to lead. But, CrossFit's documentary, most recent documentary, Fitness on Earth, is on Netflix. And my mother-in-law just pulled up and she's like, we know that you and Juliet owned a CrossFit for a long time. And, but we just watched that movie last night, and it was really compelling, how hard they trained and how, and it was we were really surprised at this CrossFit documentary on Netflix. And I just think what we know is that there are very few inflection points that you can see at the moment. You have to see them in trends, right? So what I'll tell you is that I think there absolutely has been a tide change around people needing to take better control of their lives. So what we're seeing is that people are becoming more realizing that the loci of control of their health is on them. That's why you'll see P90X and Insanity sell 1 million copies, because people are like, hey, it's not working. What I'm doing is not working. My body doesn't look the way it is. I don't feel good. I'm on all these medicines. How many paleo magazines, why is gluten-free a thing? Because people, I think, intuitively know that maybe what they're doing is not working, or they could work better. So we have it on the one hand, so we always assume that people know that what they need to do. And then now it's about moving the barriers to adherence. So if you're, a 9-year-old girl at an elementary school, you don't have any agency, as much agency, until we begin to take now systematic reforms, taking these principles in, getting kids moving more, watching less TV, eating vegetables, you can see that it's going to take all of us working at different angles to start to see a massive tide change. So I think there's been a consciousness change. But simultaneously, there's been a lot of changes in the environment. The average adult is on their smartphones for 2.5 hours a day. And think about what posture that is in, and think about the implications on your breathing and your pelvic floor in those compromised positions. So, it's not that we can't handle the tech, but we need to think differently about what the rest of our lives look like. And sort of, if you want people to address diabetes, and eat better, not that that's, just obviously type 1, type 2 diabetes are different, but you can't go into a urban center and ask people to eat vegetables when they can't buy vegetables. You can't ask kids to move around more if they're not allowed to go to recess and move around more and there's no resources for that. So at some point we're going to have the shift. And certainly our current president, who doesn't believe in exercise, that's not great for us, right? And I'm not even talking about politics. I'm just saying that, like, when the commander in chief is like, "Hey, I don't believe in exercise," we have a problem. Especially when I think the bill is going to come due for us all. What I do know is that the way human beings are wired, my wife and I are very much Republicans in this way. And I mean Republican as in local community Republican. We're communitarianism, communitarianists. And that means that we think the community is the place to solve these things. So we need to have simultaneously probably larger investment in public community works so that we can solve our own problems in a community level. I think if you look at these fitness communities now, there are so many good gyms, the Deuce Gym. There's just so many local incredible gyms, creating communities of people who then affect their grandparents and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. And that's really how I think this is going to spread. If we could get squatting to be like fidget spinners, then, we're going to take over the world. But in the meantime, I think the issue is that it's going to be a little bit slower process than we'd like. And that's okay. It just takes a while. Some of us, it's probably too late for some of us, but not too late for our children. And I think, we simultaneously, again, have to be playing for the future. And that, we've got to give people a template so that it's not some heroic change. I was in a hospital working in intensive care and in cardiac rehab at the end of one of my rotations. And I sat in on a heart surgery with a guy who was probably 350 pounds. He was an attorney, wildly successful, amazing wife, 3 kids. And, the guy had 3 stents put in his heart, and could not change his behaviors. And that always has stuck with me, because here was a person who is highly educated, affluent, and yet succumbed to stress and programming around eating. And, everyone comes from somewhere. And so it's we want to be really careful about just saying, "Hey, bro, what the hell are you doing?" Realizing that guy had learned and patterned, and our brains are wired a certain way for certain reasons. One of my podcasts I think you got to listen to, besides this one, is Gabby Reese and Neil Strauss have a podcast called The Truth Barrel. And we put up on our site, we put up an interview with Lustig, who is the kind of chief sugar researcher from UCSF. And his stuff is old and new, but really understanding the role of fructose on the brain and understanding that we're being programmed inadvertently, and that's okay. And you'll see that in Harari's book too, is understanding the programming. Like, I love ice cream and sugar. I love it. This is why I train, so I can eat ice cream. Yet I know I shouldn't eat ice cream. And literally, if I eat ice cream one day, the next time at the exact same moment, I'm like, "Hey, ice cream." My brain is wired that way. So, I have to say that here was a human being who had everything going for him, and yet still went down this path where he could not avoid these interventions. And now we have more information about our genetics and about behavior. And I guarantee you that guy was a stress case. And I guarantee you that, it wasn't about access to food. It was about sleep and stress and stress eating and programming and alcohol. And I think we either need to make sure that we're either all okay with it and like, this is who we are, we're Wall-E, and let's just embrace that and without judgment, right? Or we're going to have a come to Jesus moment about what it means to be a human being and what kind of quality of life do we expect for ourselves? Because I think that's really the issue. I think it's about lost potential. So, I think it's easy to be a negatron, but also, as you can see, when we started this thing, there were 21 CrossFits and no small private training studios. And now the 15,000 CrossFits and how many private training studios, and you can buy Olympic lifting shoes, at Target. I mean, like, something has changed. You can buy kettlebells everywhere. When we started our gym 12 years ago, you couldn't buy kettlebells, really. You just you couldn't buy them. Like, there was no, they were expensive. And we drove to Santa Cruz to a weird secondhand surf shop, and they imported kettlebells, these cheap Chinese kettlebells. And we would, save up our money and then drive down there every couple months and buy 1 or 2 new kettlebells. I mean, and now literally you can get a kettlebell at, Big Five,
Right.
It's amazing. So the world has changed. And, Biggest Loser obviously is successful for a reason, because I think people see themselves in this. And what they see is that, hey, what I'm doing currently isn't working. I don't feel good. And I think we just have to keep pushing positive and make it so that these behaviors are really sustainable. And that's why we say things like, hey, let's focus on sleep density first. Then we'll talk about sleep.
Thanks for listening to today's Cool Down. If for some ridiculous reason you are not subscribed to Garage Gym Athlete programming, fix that problem right now. Go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial, get started with us today. Thanks for listening.